Warning, this video contains spoilers for the entirety of Drakengard 3 and its DLC. If you want to experience the game first, come back after you've played it. A spoiler warning will be shown once I get to the part where it's important, so watch it until I warn you when the time comes. When people talk about Drakengard, you always either hear about Drakengard 1 or 3. We already know that Drakengard is a train wreck in storytelling that has the most "wait, they really did that?" moments we will ever see. So why do people talk a lot about 3? Is this game this amazing, or is the game this bad that no one can shut up about it? Actually, both. Don't worry, it will all make sense later. The story starts off with a narrator who describes the law of this world, when all of a sudden he is stabbed in his back by the main character. Her name is Zero, and after being called a traitor by the narrator, she goes outside to kill an army of soldiers with the help of her dragon Michael. In this first scene we see that gone are the days of Kuroi, a character that doesn't have a backbone to talk and have a confrontation with his allies and making them enemies. Zero just doesn't care to speak up and let the others talk. If you are too weak, you will die. This is exactly what happens in the tutorial section. She kills everyone in her way, even though they have no idea why, and even ask why she is doing this, to which she only says that there's no reason to tell them because they will die anyways. Her dragon seems like a reasonable man who wonders if they shouldn't tell them why, but listens to Zero and doesn't waste his energy, which makes the player wonder, is there a bigger reason to this than just wanting power over the world, or if both are just unhinged psychopaths?
All of you, women, children, the elderly, it doesn't matter. If you stand in my way, you're gonna die.
Yep, definitely psycho. At the end of the tutorial she reaches her sisters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All 6 sisters are known as Intoners, the protectors of the world, but apparently Zero is a traitor who wants to kill the rest. We still don't know why. But one is saying that Zero wants all the power to herself. We just assume that this is the case and fight until Sister 1 summons a demon dragon, Gabriel, to her side, which mortally wounds Michael and cuts off Zero's arm. The story continues when Zero wakes up after a long time of recovering from her wounds. She now has a large flower sticking out of her left eye, which isn't explained why. When she steps outside we see a child dragon play in the mud and that. Turns out that Michael died and got reincarnated as a young dragon named Mikhail. They go on to kill her sisters one by one, while Mikhail doesn't know why they are doing this. Zero only gives answers that seem selfish in nature. This concludes the beginning part of the story, and it is an effective way to start the story off and makes the player intrigued on why they are doing what they are doing. The gameplay in this game is weird. It has a lot of depth, but then again it does not. It is fun, but then again also not. It has some neat ideas from which only a few are good. Let's start with the thing everyone will do most in this game. Movement. At the start, when you only have the sword, you can walk around, jump and do an evasive dash on the ground as well as in the air. There are some weapon attacks that also move you forward, but we will ignore it because it's not a good way to move forward, if we are not talking about the glitches of course. When you dash, you have like a second until you can move again, but you can actually cancel your dash by attacking. On the ground it just makes you stop in your tracks, so that you can start your combo properly. But if you do it in the air, you can actually make you fall faster to the ground by attacking. That means the way you move around most of the time is actually jump, air dash, cancel with a light attack and fall to the ground faster. Jump again and repeat. Later on, depending on the weapon, it changes. For example, a greatsword usually has a jumping heavy attack that when used catapults Zero forward. Then you use that instead of its light attack accordingly. There isn't any more that majorly changing from the weapon, except for the best weapon type in the game that I will get to when we talk about the weapon types. Now the combat. It is fine, but really repetitive and sometimes even gets boring until chapter 3 at least. Like I said, you can dash your way away from danger and even cancel your attacks by doing so. You have a light attack and a strong attack for every weapon. Pressing the light attack repeatedly makes you execute a small combo, where you can add a finisher when you press the heavy attack, depending on where your combo is. When you press the heavy attack repeatedly you do another combo, but this time you can't add a light attack into it. You either commit to the combo or dash away. However, if you are using heavy attacks often, you should look at your stamina bar, because it depletes when you use heavy attack. Light attacks do not deplete the bar. A little tip. When you block, the animation makes it seem like the shield takes a second to appear. This is the game's visual bullshit. When you press the button, you instantly block, which is good to know because perfect blocks exist, which is really useful. Blocking also depletes stamina, you should keep an eye on that. Then there is a so-called Intoner mode that acts like a devil trigger and is overpowered as hell at first, but the longer you play the game and stronger the opponents get, you use it more strategically to wipe out enemies and still have enough of the butt to transform the next time you might need it. I didn't like it at first, but started to really like it in the later stages of the game, because of the strategic element it brings to the game. There are 4 weapon types in the game, and 2 kinds of move lists for each type. For example, the sword has the basic combos I showed you before, but when I take another weapon like a greatsword, the rule changes. Instead of slamming the sword in the ground, rising up and slamming back down, she slams the sword to the ground, creating a magic circle around her and damaging enemies. Anyways, there are 4 weapon types as I already said. The sword, the spear, the chakrams, and the best weapon type in the game, the knuckles. The sword, an all-around weapon that always gets the job done. The spear, a heavy weapon that can destroy enemy shields and if used accordingly, just delete enemy health bars. I usually use it against big slow bosses. The chakram, a weapon mainly used for crowd control and can hit enemies from a distance. The beautiful knuckles, weapons that are useful in any situation and that means outside of combat as well. Deals a lot of damage, is fast, and a remove is cancelable on top of that. It also gives you added mobility that the other weapons just don't give at all. The 2 variants are both useful. One does deal many quick hits in succession and has a dive kick, while the other has charge attacks that apparently can kill mini bosses with 1 hit. I prefer the multi-hitting moveset, the so-called Graceful Storm. The heavy attack sequence is the only thing that matters in the game. You can press the button repeatedly to add more hits, and at the end Zero does a massive kick that deals a lot of damage. You can always dash out of the attack. Yes, even after the last hit, which means you can actually do that all over again right away. But wait, I also said something about added mobility. Yes, you saw that right. With the knuckles you can jump out of a dash, which does so much for the movement. Now your movement looks like dash, jump, air dash, light attack, dash on landing, jump, and so on and so on. When you are at the slope, you can hit the heavy attack where Zero does a dive kick so that she can go down way faster. There are also the party members known as the Disciples who are only there to be absolutely useless in battle. Also they talk in the missions, but everyone talks regardless who you pick, so they really are useless in the gameplay department. What about Mikhail? You can summon him in some fights on the ground missions to aid you in specific battles. There are levels where you mount him. One of these are Star Fox-like levels, and the other is kind of like when you mounted your dragon on ground missions in earlier games, which does actually control really well. There are various DLC weapons and skins in the game. Skins give you a small boost in some stats or nothing at all. DLC weapons are mostly swords, with the only exception being the spear and the chakram. That means that if you got the DLC, you get the spear and chakram early, but not the knuckles. That's the reason why I said the game becomes boring right before chapter 3. Firstly, chapter 2 sucks, and secondly, you get the knuckles in chapter 3. There are also 6 story DLC, each a 4-verse long chapter for every sister. I will go into these when I talk about the sisters separately. Each of the chapters give a lot of money and lets you buy every weapon with no grinding necessary. This is the part where I need to say that I don't recommend this game at all, because next to buying the game, you need to buy all the DLC to get the full context, which makes everything too expensive for what it's worth. If you play on an emulator where all the DLC are free and the framework is actually stable, this is actually not a reason anymore to avoid this game. What might be a reason to avoid this game is the amount of times they bring up sexual relationships. I usually am not bothered by that, but one character specifically just can't shut up about it, and it's just the worst. In the previous videos I said I didn't really like the soundtrack that much, so is the case here as well? The power of the Intoners are called the power of song, so if one thing in this game needs to be good, it's the soundtrack. Nier released 3 years before and has the best soundtrack of any game ever, so how does this compare? I have to be completely honest here, it is still a masterpiece. Sure, it doesn't come close to Nier, but that comparison is totally unfair. One passive effect of the Intoner mode is unlocking the lyrics in the stage for the time it's active. They were really proud of the soundtrack and it really shows. What they created here is nothing less than a masterpiece. Take a listen here. But wait, there are also the DLC soundtracks released, and they are usually just the songs in previous games. But it does replace all the songs for my understanding. Anyways, let's take a look. Okay, now this is plain unfair. The entire game could have been filled with the worst songs you've ever heard, and it still would be an overall best soundtrack in the entire series because they remixed the best song ever made as DLC. Warning. Now we will get into spoiler territory where I go into the detail of the major plot points and then talk about each character when they appear, even details that get revealed right at the end of the game. This is the part that makes the game special, so if you want to experience the game for yourself, stop this video and come back later. For everyone who stayed, thank you and enjoy my descent into madness. Mikhail and Zero's plan is to kill her sisters, but the reasoning on why she wants to do that will be shared during the last few chapters of the game. It is actually quite interesting. It changes our perspective completely of what we thought happened, and makes us realize why Zero kept on saying that the things she and Four ever did when they were younger never happened in the first place back in Route A. The reason why Zero is killing her sisters and doesn't feel anything during it is because the Intoner sisters are not really sisters at all. They are just clones of her, created to prevent her from killing herself by the flower in her left eye. The flower infecting Zero's left eye is actually a parasite that clinged onto Zero's body in the moment of her death, which will destroy the world once it's big enough. When she heard that this would happen, she tried to kill herself, which made the flower panic and split Zero into 6, each one of them being one of the Intoners. That means that Zero and her sisters are actually just corpses, held alive by the flower, and each so powerful that if left alive will inevitably bring the destruction of the world. The reason why Zero traveled with the dragon to begin with is that these are the natural enemies of the flower and the only thing that can kill it. The sword of Zero is made of Michael's tooth, and that explains why it gets stronger the stronger Mikhail gets, and why it leveled down at the start of the game when Michael died. Zero and Michael made a promise to each other that once only Zero remains, that Michael would kill Zero. Because Zero is not able to kill herself due to a flower's corruption. Their first encounter and how they become so close is shown in the DLC story, while the nature of the flower is explained in the last few missions of the game. Before we get properly into the story, I want to talk about Sister 5, because she is the first one you chased down and is sadly just a disappointment. I expected to like her the most because of her similarities to Young from Ruby, but at the end I can't tell you anything besides that she's hot. When Zero and Mikhail get to Sister 5, there's a young looking boy next to her, and once we defeat her, it turns out that he is a so-called disciple, basically the Intoner servants. With the help of 5 Star, he summons a giant entity they call Angels, and after beating it, Dito backstabs 5. After that, he joins Zero, because she is also an Intoner and he doesn't care who he serves as long he's allowed to kill. He hated 5 because she was always so focused on her desires, which was always a nuisance to him. After spending countless nights with her, he grows a distaste to even her appearance of all things. He hates everything nice and cutesy. Due to his sadistic nature and having an Intoner like 5 at his side where they don't do anything that involves inflicting pain or killing most of the time, makes him want to puke. In the DLC episode, we can see 5 wanting to eat a giant crab, and we spent the full 4 verses searching and killing the crab, which at the end broke Dito and made him join in with all enthusiasm he had left. Not a very strong DLC considering that all other stories add major characterization to the characters. On the way to 4, Zero remarks that 4 is the worst because she is a virgin, and I have a lot to add to that trait of her. Zero lashing out to 4 for being a virgin made me dislike that part of her because it was the only thing she said. Later on she added the reason why it was such a big deal to her. With 4 being a virgin, she was implying that if 4 can't relieve the soldiers, then why should anyone follow her? That's the first sign that 4 is way worse than how she seems. Once we reach her and start attacking her, she acted like she didn't want any of this and was only defending herself, but something way more sinister about her is revealed in her DLC. It turns out that Zero was right. The story starts with 4 and his disciple Decadus on a mission for his sister One. Her disciple is a major masochist and thus a perfect match for her because she rejects the act of having sex before marriage. She also says that she doesn't care about jewelry and such, but later is tempted to snatch a few jewels while on the mission in some ruins. She is a hypocrite, and the reason she doesn't want to have sex is probably not even because she is saving herself. She might just use the masochism of Decadus to motivate him more with the rejection, or even more sinister. She feels like she is above everyone else. This might seem like a stretch, but later when 4 does receive Gabriela from 1 to help her on her mission, 4 finds out about a crew of elven radicals fleeing and she follows them to hunt them down. What ensues is one of the most gruesome things I need to do in a video game, period. Four controls Gabriella and uses her flames to kill the fleeing elves who plead for their lives, and cry out that they did nothing wrong while Four manically laughs her ass off. Turns out that Four is not only a narcissistic hypocrite, but also a major racist. Gabriella basically shouts to Four, telling her to stop, and this is basically manslaughter now, to which Four hysterically answers,
What's so funny?
Manslaughter. We're fighting elves, remember? So it can't be manslaughter.
Decadus and Gabriella are forced to watch as Four destroys a whole fleet of elves for her entertainment. Before you say anything, no, it's not like Drakengard 1. In that game, you killed everyone equally. Heim didn't care who or what it was that he killed, and some of his victims just turned out to be. After killing Four, you finally get the fist from Decadus after you make him join as well. The chapter where you chase down 3 is unique because halfway through, her disciple Octa already joins you and gives you a chakram, the last weapon type depending on if you have the DLC or not. This character, man. This stupid character can't stop talking about his dick for a second. I wouldn't even be surprised if these were his last words.
See? Even in times of crisis, my man's sword is as sharp as
Ah,
a witch's.
come on, man. Anyways, the reasoning on why he left Priest's side is because she didn't want to have to spend more time with him in the bed anymore. This would be actually something I would really dislike. However, when you actually get to 3, Octa tells 3 that the inhuman experiments that she does drove him away from her side. She doesn't believe him and says that the reason of his betrayal is just that she doesn't give him attention anymore. So we as the audience believe that this is mostly the reason because Octa was already established to be this perverted weirdo. However, if you get to 3's DLC, you can see Octa growing more and more distant to 3 because of her continuous overstepping in boundaries when it comes to her terrible experiments. The last straw was when she experimented on humans, which made Octa realize that she needs to be stopped in any way possible. This absolutely blew my mind when I finally played the DLC, that what Octa said in that one boss fight was actually true, that he actually had some depth to his character. In the boss fight, Michael makes a comment that he has a weird feeling when he looks at 3. Like his heart aches and how it feels like he has a burning flame inside of him. It sounds like he's in love with 3, which also Zero teases him about, which actually I wouldn't even hold against him, to be honest. I mean, look at her. However, it was not what he was actually feeling, because as we see in the cutscene, he eats her alive. His dragon instincts, the natural hostility against the floor appears. Right before he totally lost his control, a man appears and captures him. He is sent, and he was sent by Lady 2. He kidnaps Michael and disappears. In a gameplay sense, it doesn't mean anything because you get him back in the verse anyways, but it shows us that Zero deeply cares about him. Once we get to Sister 2, we see that there's no trace left to her cheery attitude we saw in the prologue. An empty shell that has no personality left. Everyone in that scene faults the power of the song that she ended up like that. The truth is way darker than what I have expected. In the DLC we see how romantical Two's and Sen's relationship actually was. The romantical relationship they had was mentioned in the base game, but we didn't actually get to experience that like the relationship with the other Intoners and their disciples. It starts off really cute how Sen and Two go on missions together they received from Sister 1. They opened an orphanage back in the cathedral and deeply care for the children in it, which will also get really important as the DLC goes on. Sent is actually really dumb and intelligent, while 2 is extremely gullible, so that she actually believes everything he says, which to be fair is really funny and heartwarming, especially considering how Zero's group treats him with his random trivia time. Things take a dark turn really fast when 2 says that she's afraid that all her happiness might one day pour out like how when you fill too much water in a cup. Huh, I wonder if that will be important in the future. In the next campfire scene they get a letter from Decadus, in which is written that the capital is in a dire situation, so they both hastily get to the capital, only to be greeted with their biggest fear. Their soldiers turned into monsters, which deeply wounds 2 mentally as she needs to kill them and slowly loses her mind that she even almost gives up. Sent reveals that the reason they turned like that is because he used the power of 2's song to make them stronger, as he just couldn't think of the consequences this might have had, and reassures that 2 has no fault in what happened. 2 doesn't listen and gives herself all the fault because it was her power, which wouldn't have been used if she didn't exist in the first place. I need to comment on how great it was to use Sen's stupidity to actually move the plot forward. 2 now has a deep fear of what awaits them when they get to the basement, and nothing could have prepared her to what she finds there.
Where are the children? This monster can't be them! Send! Help!
all the kids got combined into a giant homunculus, which Two and Cent are forced to kill while hearing the scared and confused screams of the children. In this battle we see the exact moment Two's spirit gets broken and how she becomes as she is in the main game. Actually, it was such an amazing mini story and probably one of the best things that this game has to offer. Back in the main game, after the end of Two's battle, Mikhail blasts her with his firebolts and kills her with her last words being
Michael.
Cent afterwards joins in with Zero and her crew, saying that he doesn't care who he serves as long as it isn't Intoner, which probably he just said to hide the fact that he is actually really resentful for what he has done. Now the next objective is a capital, to kill the last remaining Intoner, Sister One. Once Zero and her crew reach the main building where One resides, she releases her disciples. The disciples want to be there until the very end, but they had no choice than to part ways when Zero turned them back into their original states, into birds. Apparently the disciples were just birds given form by the Intoner with their songs, like everything else in the story. One summons Gabriel and Mikhail takes a blow to save Zero, mortally wounding him. In this point it is revealed that the last wish of a dragon is one of the most sacred things there is. Dragons don't usually get reborn, but Michael's last wish was to get reborn to assist Zero even after his passing. Mikhail, however, doesn't wish for a reincarnation. Regardless of Zero's tries to do just that, he wishes that Zero will be able to win this battle. Zero does just that. She fights with blood and tears in her face, exclaiming multiple times that she should have died and not Mikhail. With Gabriel dead, Zero turns back, walking towards the corpse of Mikhail, wondering how she will end things now. When suddenly, she gets stabbed in her back by someone who looks like One. It turns out that he is actually One's brother, who had the task of killing Zero if One would fall in battle. After he stabbed Zero, her blood flooded the clothes of Brother One, making him look like Mana from Drakengard 1. The sword was forged by a tooth of Gabriella as opposed to the sword Zero wields, which was forged from Michael's tooth. Unable to decide what to do next with all Intoners dead, he has no purpose anymore, but decides to open up a new religion that doesn't praise the Intoners, but only Intoner One, with him becoming the true and only one. At the end, next to Zero's and Mikhail's corpses, birds appear that we can only assume are Dito, Decadus, Octa and Cent, alongside a new mysterious character who says that this branch was doomed to fail, that somewhere another branch should have been taken. The setup sounds like this would lead to Drakengard 1, but the truth is that Yoko Taro, the director, didn't like what happened with this game, so he wrote a manga that focuses on Brother One, which in turn leads to that instead. Now it's time to talk about One's DLC. It was disappointing. Instead of going through Gabriella's transformation into Gabriel, it was only about how Brother One was created and how both warmed up to each other, with Gabriella protecting both. That transformation was never mentioned. You know, the form that killed Michael and Mikhail? The transformation that Zero scolded One for being such an inhuman act? Also, Brother One never appears in the final 3 routes, so the DLC just got wasted on the origin of a character we only see once. What are the most important DLC story-wise? In the last place, we have Five's episode, because it didn't tell us anything about what we didn't already know. Next to the interactions she had with some enemies, there was nothing important. Well, I guess it was kind of funny at times. Right above, we got One's episode for the reasons I listed before. Zero's just slightly above One because even though she didn't tell us anything important that we didn't know before, it showed us that Michael and Zero warmed up and gave each other the promise at the end. He will kill Zero to save the world. Three's episode is in the top 3, which might surprise some people, but it actually had some pretty important characterization for Octa. How he's the only disciple to leave his Intoner before her dying and what led to it. The next one is episode 4. Do I even need to say anything else I didn't say anymore? It made you control the whole genocide where everyone was demanding you to stop, from both an ally and enemy standpoint. It would have been the most worth it if 2's episode wasn't just so amazing. I don't need to say anything on it anymore. The way you felt the frustration of 2 and how she needed to fight to the end, where you just felt that she was done and when she snapped. When you load back into the game, you see a new chapter opened up. Branch B. It has the length of a usual chapter, so don't worry, you don't need to beat the game again. Yet. Branch B starts when the crew met Octa for the first time, but for some reason Cent is also in the group. The game doesn't explain why, and the crew keeps asking about Lady 2. He doesn't know the answer, but it's obvious that this was only a gameplay decision. Usually you get sent way too late, so they needed to involve him somehow. While Zero traverses through the forest, she hears that something isn't quite right. Once they arrive, they see an injured 3 dying in front of their eyes. As they proceed to the end, they see One being impaled next to a laughing and dancing 2. Dito goes in to kill 2, but Cent stabs Dito in the back, killing him. Zero, Decadus and Octa need to kill Cent and 2 now. With their last breaths, the couple summon Raphael, a giant spider-like angel. Raphael encases Zero and Mikhail in the giant spider web filled with poison. They are fighting against time to survive but unfortunately Mikhail inhaled too much of the poison, so that after the battle he unfortunately died this time as well. Zero tried to prevent it by forging a pact with the power of her song. Zero disappears and Mikhail now has a flower in his eye, which will inevitably make his death really painful in the future. So yeah, this ending is a bad ending again. Oh, you don't know how it will affect the future? Well, I know! Branch C begins in the desert, and after the first mission, Mikhail devolves all the way back to his first form. The mysterious woman is intrigued by this event and wants to inspect it further. A little while longer the group meets Two, who is just as insane as in Branch B. In the battle, Sand keeps saying that he is sorry that Two became like this, which creates suspense if he is going to betray us again. However, Sand doesn't betray you this time and even gives the finishing blow alongside the other disciples. With Two dying, a trap was activated, which was set by One to get rid of the disciples. Zero angrily moves on and travels to the capital where she confronts One. One says that she knows that Zero intends on killing her and immediately using Mikhail afterwards to kill herself. However, One does not trust Zero, so they start fighting in hopes of ending everything herself. This set piece is just so amazing. Regardless of who wins, the outcome will be the same, and the only thing driving them to kill each other is their ego. Mikhail still being in his first form is no match for One who summoned Gabriel and dies yet again, but this time he takes Gabriel down with him. Zero in a rage attacks One alone and kills her. This time Brother One wasn't created, so Zero doesn't die. She however has a total mental meltdown where she tells herself that she will find another dragon that kills her while throwing up over and over again. The mysterious woman says that this branch needs to be closed immediately. Before the last branch, new chapters open up called the Lost Chapters. These are just there to establish that Zero knew about the woman's presence who recorded her this whole time. Her name is Akkord and is what is known as a recorder, who taught Zero about the flower and how to destroy it in the first place. Akkord isn't allowed to actually meddle into the affairs of Zero, so this is why she was in the background this whole time. The final branch, Branch D, is the best way this game could have ever ended. You need to get every weapon first to unlock it, which doesn't have any story meaning but probably prepares you for what this brutal chapter has to offer. They want you to get the best weapons of each type to have an easier time, which does get clear when you get the final upgrade materials for the strongest weapons, which you didn't get in prior chapters. Anyways, this branch has a lot of things that happen because it's longer than the other two branches. You first get to Sister 4 who got totally corrupted by the flower and shows her true madness while being able to summon a demon dragon just like Gabriel by herself, which leaves everyone baffled on how she was able to do it. Then you fight 4 on the ground and kill her off screen. Mikhail eats her corpse and evolves twice in a row. The next sister is 3, but when you get to the end of the forest, 5 suddenly appears again as a living corpse. Dito for the first time starts to love 5, knows that she is an abomination, so he summons his angel without the assistance of 5's song. Sand does the same to counter Dito's angel and for Zero to fight a proper fight against 5. In the battle, 5 exclaims that she always adored Zero. You start to feel bad for her at the end of the fight. After that, Dito and Sand return to their birth forms due to having summoned an angel without the assistance of the Song of the Intoners. Sand is okay with it because the world without Two is not a world worth living in. Yes, apparently Two is dead in this branch. Heartbroken, they all continue to their next target, Sister 3. 3 summoned an ancient dragon, which proved to be too difficult for them to handle. In the fight, Zero is only able to win if they summon the Angel of Decadus, which he is more than happy to do so because he is a masochist. Anyways, later at the camp, Octa asks Zero for why she does all of this. And this is the revelation. This is where she reveals that she was dead this whole time and the only way to destroy the flower is to die alongside the sisters the flower created as a self-defense mechanism. The way this was told was so unique because you play through a level while everything is in black and white, while Kuroi Uta was playing in the background. Octa, Mikhail and Zero confront One where she already awaits them. Gabriel takes on Mikhail one-on-one while Zero fights One one-on-one. One and Zero fight for the same reason as in Branch C. They don't trust each other to end it themselves. One also can't in good conscience let Zero win after making her suffer as much as she did with killing all of his sisters. During the fight against One, something interesting happens. You know, I will just let it play out for a bit.
Recording M5310 E0040 GM. The flower's defenses created 5 sisters from Zero's body. At first, they were simply corpses controlled by the flower. But soon they gained self-awareness and began to act of their own free will. If the flower isn't destroyed, mankind has no future in this branch. Some of us are of the opinion that this branch should be sealed off at once. But I disagree. I think at least one of them might be able to accomplish it. No. I should stop. I'll erase this entry and hand the recording off to the next pass in its current state. End recording.
Octa needs to summon his angel to weaken One. It still isn't enough where a court of all people intervenes and gives Zero an opportunity to kill One. She does so, but she needs to sacrifice a court, to where she says that she is thankful for her friend. Zero cries all for her and only sees a demolish a court where it was revealed that she was an android all along.
Tell the whole world. I said hi.
Mikhail slowly approaches Zero, where they exchange some last words, and Zero reassures that this is the only way because she wasn't meant to be alive in the first place. The last words of Zero are,
You've grown strong, Mikhail.
This makes him cry. But he is determined to finish it once and for all. Coming up is the most infamous boss in the entire series. People who have never even heard of Drakengard know this boss. The final song. The set piece looks like the Queen Beast from Drakengard 1, but it's actually much worse. One mistake and you need to retry an 8-minute rhythm game auto-scroll. You heard me right! The last boss is the rhythm boss that punishes you in every way, changing the camera perspective where you can't see when you to press the button, and at the end you can't even see anything. At least the song is amazing. I didn't talk about it before, but every sister and the boss fights have a unique version of the song Kuroi, which I have talked about before. Why do I mention it here? Because the last song is another version of it. One by one, when another sister rises up, the songs play, and at the end, when all are together, it turns into this masterpiece that is in all aspects simply breathtaking. After the battle, Mikhail kills Zero and flies off. Accord turns out to not be the only one. They are a series of robots who all share the same role. They are proud of the brave model that sacrificed herself to save a dear friend and simultaneously pay respects together. What a game, man. This is the kind of game that hurts my brain when I think about it, because I have no idea if I like it or not. I have so much to love about this and also so much I despise. How I feel about the entire series will probably need to be made into another video, so if anyone wants to see that, like, comment and subscribe. For now, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will let Accord have it from here.
I hope to see you again someday. But until then, I'd like to say thank you for playing.